is still a good thing too. It's really nice. Like you said, you could be in the barbershop, you could be at your church, you could be all kind of places. And everybody that you develop a relationship with, even a casual relationship, every one of those people is somebody you can turn to when you want to make a new connection, when you want advice, when you want to learn something. And that by having lots and lots of people in your life in different ways, you have more kinds of opportunities, right?
Right, right. Yeah, you can. But I think the biggest difference, go ahead and finish what you were saying. I don't want to interrupt what you
No,
were
no, go
saying.
to the biggest difference. What's
The
the
biggest
biggest
difference,
difference?
we were raised to needing the physical touch,
Mhm.
and younger people don't need that. They accept that virtual as the real touch, as the real relationship. They don't they take a the passage to entry is not obstructed by distance or touch. It is by connection. You have a purpose and a value, same as mine. We're connected. Period. There's
Well
no, I
well,
can't wait to meet you in that sense. Even though it's kind of a bonus now to have in person, and I think people will still go out of the way to have that. But I think a lot of us, I'm not saying all of us, because I think I've adapted that thing because I saw how valuable it is. Because with the podcast, you don't have, I started in 2013, so you didn't have time to, you know, vet and try to figure out what it's going to look like physically. You just accept it and you kind of carry that on with you. But I think it's something that's something people will have to adapt to.
well, I kind of agree with you, but I disagree with you on something. First, I've
Okay.
been working mostly remotely, coaching
Hmm.
people across the country by the old-fashioned telephone for almost 20 years. And I have contacts all over the place. And sometimes I've visited clients' offices and I've given speeches and things like that. But like you, I think I'm very comfortable in a remote environment. And during COVID, I had my infrastructure in place, the technology,
Hmm.
the base of people. So I think you can go a long way. But there is another issue, and that is there's lots of research suggesting that human beings have evolved to need other people. Sometimes for some, it's the physical access to other people. It really varies. And also to be in the natural world. And there's research suggesting that our youngest people in the workplace have a higher level of loneliness and mental health issues than has been the case in the past. And that doesn't mean you cannot work remotely. It means that in your life, it's good to have the skill set to connect with other people. It may not seem directly related to the job, but it can be connected to your well-being, and that impacts your work. And it's again, it's not just other people, it's also nature. So the all kinds of kind of new studies saying that college students who get outside and engage in outside activity tend to have a higher sense of happiness and well-being than people who are just always in the room. So yes, the remote work is wonderful, but don't forget people because, we evolved over thousands of years to do well when we have social contact.
And I don't disagree at all. I think it actually complements, because I think when if I need somebody, if I need some physical touch, I need it from my family. I need it from my wife. I need it from my
Mhm.
mom. I need it from those extended family people that mean a lot to me. And also people who I really want to really meet physically, because that's a special connection that you
Yeah.
can't take away the value from that. But if I'm engaging in business, I'm engaging in a certain way, and I know there's several levels to that, but not the family level or the friends level. I can live with having the virtual world and the virtual relationships be the real relationships, we're not excluding the physical touch. We're
Mhm.
just saying,
Yeah.
I don't need that. I don't need that as the initial terms of engagement, so to speak. I don't need it to initiate the relationship.
There is a generational divide, which I find troubling to the extent I have friends who are a good bit younger than I am, and they're totally resistant to
Mhm.
using not just social media, but tools like Slack, doing
Yeah,
research in a smart way online. I think that when I'm working with clients, and I work with a lot of people kind of like in their prime, maybe 40s, 50s leaders, that's something that I look for as a sort of a red flag. If somebody is uh, resisting the technology their field is using, if they don't want to try something, I know they're heading for trouble because part of doing your job these days is understanding the communication and other technologies that support your field, and it's just become basic for everybody, no matter how old you are, right?
right, right. And this particular point is that if you're planning to have a career and planning to thrive, you a lot of the barriers are self-induced more than they
Yeah.
are actual barriers. Is that you've decided that you will only engage in a certain way. Then, of course, when the terms of engagement change, so does the results that you're expecting. So you'll have to change the expectations then. And then, you can't expect the same, you can't new wine in old wine skins, as they say. You have to learn to adapt and adapt again and adapt again. And we're used to that as human beings, and in fact, our bodies even are able to adapt to different types of weather and different types of stresses and to, different habits that we have. Our bodies can do that. But a lot of times we're resistant. Those of us who, older, we're resistant because, we're uncomfortable, and that uncomfortable, is a red flag for us. But really, it's sort of like it really is new growth area if we give it a chance.
We'll be back with
Thank you very much for listening to the Voice of Job Seekers. If it's the first time you've been listening to this podcast, thank you very much for joining me. My name is Mark Anthony Dyson. If you want to know about me, you want to know about the podcast, you can go to voicejobseekers.com, where you can find podcasts, articles, videos. You can also leave comments if you like. On the side, there's a speak pipe button where you can leave a comment, and you can tell me what you think of the show, maybe suggest a guest, or if you're a career professional where you advise other people about their careers, you can leave advice there. I'll be glad to be played on the show. In fact, I'll be even more glad if you leave your name and your website, so that way I can give you credit for your content, and certainly appreciate if you do that. I'd like to see you do more of that, so those who listen frequently and advise people. So there you have it. Enjoy and be a part of the community that kind of way. You can also call 718-365-9822. You can text message me. I'll accept this message, or give me a voice record it there. You can also send me an email, mark@thevoiceofjobseekers.com. Thank you very much. I'll try to make this short and sweet. Since I'm doing once a month now for the summer, instead of totally taking a hiatus, I thought I'd play some interviews where I was a podcast guest. So let me run down to you what's going on with this particular episode, not particularly in this order. One of the podcasts I was a part of is called Leading in Color podcast with Sarah Morgan. She's an HR executive. She's been around the bend a few times. So she gave me an opportunity to talk about the Great Resignation on her podcast. And I play a few minutes of that. And if you want to listen to the whole thing, I'm going to direct you on the voiceofjobseekers.com to her podcast, so you can listen to the whole episode on her platform. And I'll do the same for also Beverly Jones' podcast, Jazz About Work, where I was a guest there recently, in fact, the last few weeks. And you can listen to that podcast in full on npr.org/jazz about work, I believe, or I'll put the links there. And there we got a chance to have a discussion about several things regarding job search, including where she asked me where people stand as far as working from home versus working to returning to the office. Then I talked to Mike Bird on his podcast, Career Builders, the Career Builders podcast. It's him and Lisa Plain. And we got a chance to talk about interview advice. And they're all snippets. They're very short snippets and just a few minutes of each. I didn't want to drag it on because I want you to go to their platform. And I'll also link to Mike Bird's podcast, which is on hiatus, but I was one of the last guests that was on this podcast at the last record. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoy the summer content that I have for you. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or text me, or you can contact me through LinkedIn. That's cool. Or Twitter, Mark Anthony Dyson on all platforms and on those two particular platforms. In the meantime, enjoy the show. Thank you very much for joining me. Hope to see you next month in June. I don't know what the date I'll post, but I'll definitely post some other interviews of where I've been, plus some other content that I've been producing. Have a great month, have a great week, and have a great day. Peace in the valley. I'll talk to you soon.
One of those phone calls from an employer saying I wasn't the chosen candidate. It was like 60 seconds long. I don't know how people can't do 15 of those in 20 minutes and just, clear the decks and close the loop for all of those job seekers, all those candidates who invested a lot of time and energy. And I feel like something's got to give there. If you had to kind of counsel someone on like how do they manage, maybe they've got a couple of employers that are putting them through this kind of gauntlet, what might you say to them to maybe encourage one to close faster than the other? Or what might you say?
Well, for one, job seekers should not rely on one or two interviews. That's the problem. That's a fundamental problem. I know it's hard to get interviews, but you can get 5 interviews if you kept at it. People get settled with one interview. They put all their hope and their resources and their energy and their time into one interview. That's the propensity that people work with. When you should be trying to do, after you get the one interview, get the next. So you got your favorite one maybe at the beginning stage, and you got the least favorite one in the final stage. And then you can kind of help the process along. So look, are you guys really interested and serious? And please be honest. And this is where I'm at. I'm in the final stages of a couple of interviews. Now, probably a better strategy, and this is argumentable for between career coaches, and you probably know this, but one would say, well, wait till you get the offer before you say something in, or don't say anything at all, because that might be, yeah, but if you're having a conversation and if you feel the vibe is in your favor, why not say something? I mean, if you're a good candidate, be a good candidate. Show that you have other people interested in you. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. And I've had discussions and everybody varies, but I think everybody needs to follow their instincts and follow your gut instinct. You feel like this might be a conversation well received, go ahead and have it. But I think the number one mistake that candidates make, they rely on the onesies and not trying to take advantage of every opportunity that they have to be, wanted, and to also leverage those opportunities to possibly get the best situation you can.
I love that.
That's the reason why it's not taught. There'll be college career counselors that will disagree with me. They'll say that they've gone over it, but
You don't teach them how it's going to be mediated. You don't teach them how it's going to be approached. You don't teach them that maybe their first question that they're asked before the application process is even discussed is, how much are you looking for?
Mm-hmm.
You don't expect them to write a resume, but you do expect them to negotiate their own.
Right.
Real.
Right. They're
So
supposed to negotiate not just their salary, but also their time off and
yeah,
their
time off
other
and their
perks and
benefits
yeah,
and
and
other,
and when
and
their health benefits start and all that kind of stuff. And I'm fresh out of
right.
college as a 22-year-old person, or I've gone through a program in computer technology. I may be an older,
Mm,
be traditional college age, I may be a little bit older, but this now I'm just finishing my education in an area type
yeah,
of a thing. And I don't know what I'm doing. Like, yeah,
right,
I don't know what I'm
right.
doing.
You don't know what you're doing, but more so, most people don't realize that they can research and at least get some intelligence about that information. If you're lucky,
Mm,
if you have a friend who refers you to the organization that can kind of give you what the range might be.
right.
So, but even a lot of people, a lot of them graduates who are just getting those jobs first time, don't know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, you got to be both, because even though
Hmm.
there's a pay transparency, even if it's across the board, you still have to be educated about what's going. All that's going to tell you is that you won't get less than this, and you won't get more than that.
Hmm.
And even if there's a range out there, depending upon who it is, you can still get more than the range, even
You
in some
can.
cases.
You can.
But because there's a lack of education across the board, I'm really probably, unfortunately, there's a disparity in how men negotiate and women negotiate and how
Yep.
different races bear in
Yep.
those negotiations. That's for another podcast you could do later
Yeah. We
on.
could do a
But I
whole
think
episode just on that. Yeah.
the whole idea is that there is true transparency, that companies basically are still playing the game,
Hmm.
is that we still want more for less.
Yeah. Yeah.
And no matter how you shape it, if you see something, a range like that, where there's $100,000 difference between top and the middle, I would say run for your life first.
Hmm.
Rather than, because if they played that game, they're going to play other games. Trust
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So
And I
companies
think
can,
candidates are savvy and job seekers are savvy. Like they know
yeah,
when companies are just checking a compliance box versus really trying to be open and transparent in terms of how they are approaching job seekers and the respect that they give you during that application process. And for the companies
yes,
out there, just be, to me, it feels like a call to action to be more transparent and to be slightly less capitalistic in terms of how it is that you approach those initial conversations with people about compensation and when you're
mhm,
extending offers, because people are not aware of the ways in which they can and should negotiate for themselves. And to me it should be a compelling reason to put your best foot forward with folks, and knowing that I think the stats are somewhere like 60% of people don't, it may be even higher, but like 60% of people don't negotiate
yeah,
for additional things beyond whatever is offered to them. And if that
yeah,
number is true, then if there's an opportunity there for you to just make a choice to do better by people.
yeah. There was a CNBC program I saw. Actually, it was a video, and
Mm,
this person works for CNBC. They were a brand ambassador. But having said that, they were a pretty wealthy person outside of their CNBC presence. And she was asked, what should people who graduate, should they negotiate? She said, no, you
mm,
should be, you should say thank you and work really hard, and and start to earn that, so that you can start to earn the right to get it by the ways of promotions and eventually get into that power position.
which
Ooh.
is sad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she told that to hundreds of thousands of people,
People,
and
yeah,
that
that's
is
kind of
and
irresponsible.
that was as wrong as rain.
Mm,
It is, and again, she quite wealthy outside of her own C&B work. But all
mm-hmm.
that to say is that amazed me that somebody would
Mm-hmm.
ask that, because really, when you come out of school, that's your first opportunity to really start in. And really, as I learned how to negotiate even when I had hourly jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where it started. And I think
Yeah.
when both my sons, I tried to train them in, asking for more, even if it's an hourly job.
Yeah.
I mean, the first job, okay, you're junior in high school and you just want to get the feeling. But after a while, it's like you got to kind of create your own opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, companies mislead people, because when they're asked, okay, how much does this position pay, and you don't tell them, it becomes this. It becomes a game, and whoever does the best job in winning, playing the game, wins.
Yeah.
And is that the message you really want to send
Want to send to
somebody who
someone
hasn't
as
even
their.
started yet? All that
Mm-hmm.
inside the Great Resignation, people are frustrated with the fact that they don't trust employers. They don't want a job that sucks, and they don't want to have to give blood in order to make a living,
Yeah, for
and it's
sure.
unfair. Yeah.
So, if there were two or three pieces of advice that you could give to employers right now who
Mhm.
are struggling in during the great resignation, but they want to be more successful in reaching job seekers and bringing good talent on board, what would you tell them that they need to do?
First is clarity. Gain a lot
Mm,
of clarity about what you want out of your employees and about each role that you put out there. If you got job descriptions that maybe you haven't, in jobs you haven't filled in 5 years, and using a job description from 5 years ago just to get something out there is irresponsible, and
mm-hmm.
it's misleading because that job has drastically changed,
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
think you could self-correct it in the within the interview process, but really get clarity and tell it like it is and tell the
yeah,
truth, so
yeah.
that
Because you
people
at
are
that point
reading.
you've wasted your own time and a lot of people's time posting
Yes,
something asking for skills and experience that may no longer be needed, or more skills and experience are needed. Now the recruiter is looking for something that doesn't match what you as the hiring manager actually want. So yeah,
right. Why
that
do I need a
upfront.
translator for a job description that's written in
Mm-hmm,
English? I mean,
mm-hmm.
why should I have to read between the lines and try to guess what this it actually is?
Yeah.
And then when I come to the interview, then it ends up being there's a whole section that you don't even include.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not saying every employer gets that. So I know that some people say, well, my job, okay, I get that. But I see that a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it for years, and it's been complained about for years, and nothing has changed for years. You say you want to reach top talent, then how can you reach top talent if you're not clear? Because top talent is not going, top talent expects plain English
Yeah.
and for you to be forthright and straightforward.
Yeah. Yeah. For real.
So that's one thing that they could do. The pay transparency, I understand that's supposed to make it fair, and I think it will make it fair for some industries, while others are going to play that game. And I would say that the secret gets out once, that's going to be it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have
Mm-hmm.
channels now where people are, they're starting to post job postings, job descriptions, to pay transparency. People don't have to look on Glassdoor anymore. And I know a lot of people have said, go look at Glassdoor. And then when people go, look, don't pay attention to everything that they wrote there. No, but I am going to corroborate that what people have said on Twitter, on subreddit,
Yep.
on Instagram, and
Yeah.
on LinkedIn. So you have all those data points to be able to look at. And I can go now and ask the person that used to work that position what that position really is like when they left. And I could talk to some of the departments that work with your department to find out what that is and what it's like to work with your department. And I can also even go as far as looking at a past boss that used to have that department and really get the inside scoop. So there's a lot of things that people look at and get data points. Unfortunately, you've got to do that work right now. There's no way to go about it. And there's no one person you should rely on one answer for a position.
But companies need to know that
But companies need to know
are doing
that the
that work.
secret will be out, and you don't want to be on that New York Times thing, because word gets out fast. Word has always gotten out fast.
And I think
But
social media has made it even faster because it doesn't take but one screenshot of a post that goes viral and that can really negatively impact your reputation. You may never see it, you may never know, but it gets shared in private groups and inboxes and things like that, and the word is out that people don't
right,
want to work for you.
right. So there's several people on Glassdoor who said one thing, and there are a bunch of other data points that corroborated, then you've got a problem. And even worse, your credibility is shot. So can you expect top talent? You can expect talent, but top talent, that's a whole nother story, because they know what they're worth and you can't lie to them. So that would be another thing. The other thing I think that companies will need to know is, especially when we talk about diversity, you've got to drink where the water is green, where the water is. They make all the kind of excuses that they said, well, we don't know where, like the Wells Fargo CEO said 2 summers ago, that we can't find people of color talent. I'm going, oh gosh, for real? All these conferences that go on, there are a dozen and more conferences that you should participate in if you're really intentional about going. There's Afrotech, there's NESB, the National Engineering Society, or something.
Society of Black Engineers.
Engineers,
NSBE.
yes, yeah, NSBE. Thank you. You can go to those conferences, be a part, be a speaker. You can participate, be partners with them. There are branches all over the United States. You don't have to fly. You just go to a meeting that's in your city.
That's local.
I mean, there's no excuse now with
And
all
most of the professional societies have whether a Black, because I recently posted jobs with the National Association of Black Accountants in the city where I was recruiting for a particular role. Black journalists, Black human resources professionals, like it doesn't matter what it is, there generally is going to be a Black, a Latin, a Asian, or a umbrella people of color group for
all kinds.
that.
They're all kinds. And the fact that you're going to the same college, Ivy League colleges and large schools that have large funds but they have a low enrollment of Black students and Hispanic and Asian students is inexcusable now. All the resources are right there on Google. How far you want to look into it is a reflection of how you feel about them. All the resources are there. And I think there's certain industries, I think just to summarize it all, I think there's certain industries have been more vocal than others. Eventually, the other ones will start to be a lot more vocal and will say a whole lot more than they've been saying. So although I think to some degree, the Great Resignation window to really make a big difference might be closing, I think that doesn't mean that people should shut their mouth. And they should continue to be vocal no matter where it is, because people need to know. I need to know if a company is a horrible employer. And you should want to know.
Why do you think that the window is closing. You mentioned that a little bit earlier. Why do you think the window is closing?
Good question. The Great Recession of 2007, 2008
Mhm.
probably had remnants for several years after.
Mm.
And one of the things that started to happen was a more innovation and more tech
Mm.
positions emerged. Things that we never heard of before,
Mm.
positions that had never been heard of before. Now I don't know if you remember, but in that time, there were several years where there were a lot of tech positions that remained open for a long
Long
time,
time. Yeah,
for
for
a
sure.
very long time.
Hmm.
And so the leverage for a lot of companies in not hiring is as that we haven't found talent for these positions. Well, there's not a college that's teaching those positions yet. Those positions are new. So it's a
Hmm.
technology. So where are people supposed to go to learn this technology? And would you be willing to hire somebody who's not experienced in that technology, even though you said that you needed 3 to 5 years for that technology
When the
to
technology
exist?
hasn't even existed that
It haven't
long. Right.
existed. If you think about this, look on the amount of cybersecurity jobs that are available
Hmm.
and look at all the unfulfilled jobs that are there.
Hmm.
That will tell us, that tells a story.
Hmm.
And that also, as more technology has arisen over the past couple of years, there's a lot of jobs that have gone unfulfilled because they were lousy jobs all these years and they're by lousy employers. But also that there are new jobs by employers that really like still cryptocurrency and NFTs still new,
Yeah.
whether you are on one side of the fold believing how valid and whether they're viable in the next few years or not, we can
Hmm.
argue that. But those are new technologies. On one hand, it's a great opportunity for somebody that doesn't know tech to get to know tech and maybe go to a smaller company and say, hey, I'm interested in learning this. Maybe I can
Hmm.
maybe volunteer themselves into that position. The
Hmm.
other positions where that option may not be as available, instead, they're supposedly interviewing, recruiting for these positions, but they
Hmm.
never fill those positions. And I think a lot of that same thing that actually what happened said, well, how can there be a great resignation? A lot of people who don't have jobs are not fulfilling the ones that are open. Thus the
Hmm.
game again
Yeah.
of being able to fill jobs that really nobody has any idea how to qualify for. And little do people know that maybe it doesn't really take all that much.
Yeah.
All that to say that these games are going to continue to play. It's crazy, but I think that's one of the problems. And then two, companies will restructure around the jobs that they don't fulfill. That's also something they did in the Great
Right.
Recession.
Yeah.
They'll
That is
start to
true.
restructure and start to make less. And they've been talking about artificial intelligence becoming a major factor. It's starting to become a factor in some industries.
Hmm.
I'll say in more so in the blue collar retail positions,
Yeah.
we're seeing that, but also in other positions that they threatened to implement it. That now's the time where they can justify it because they don't have the people to work those positions.
Mm.
So we might end up going to a restaurant and it being a la carte without a waitress or a barista,
Yeah, that's
and
true.
that you actually can automatically order it from your table and it could be bought to you by a machine, which is
Creepy.
happening already.
It's happening, but it's the thought of it
Yes.
is creepy.
But can you imagine every restaurant you go to not having a human touch?
Hmm.
So that's why I'm saying that whether it's a month or a year away, the window's closing because people are starting to are thinking that the great resignation is this fraternity or sorority that they can be a part of without the hazing. They could join it, they could be a part of it, and you could see the tweets today. If you try to look for the great resignation, say, yeah, I became part of the great resignation today, and I quit my job.
Mm.
And no, you still got to be thinking as a job seeker,
Yeah.
You still got to be strategic as a job seeker. You got to have a plan in place. I
Yeah.
know that people want to get away from lousy jobs, but at the same time, you need to be thoughtful about how you're going to present yourself to the next employer.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Did I
Good
talk
stuff.
enough? Maybe
You
I
talk.
talked too much.
No, you definitely you are answering the questions and giving us food for thought, and that is the goal. So as we wrap up, tell me what the audience can do to support you in the work that you're doing right now